Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Right, let me share my screen. So we are done with views and temporary tables in the last class. Today we need to start a new topic. So which topic you only tell me, like do, which topic shall I start? Indexes or CTEs?
Indexes, ma'am.
Index. Okay, let's see index only then. So okay, let's start indexes today. Index is something like I can call it as a reference, right? We all know what index normally is, suppose if I'm talking about any books or story books, something like that, if we have some chapters in that books, in the starting page we'll have index of that, right? Basically it will talks about the chapters and maybe the page numbers from which page to which page that chapter belongs to, right? We all know that, correct? Am I right?
Yes, ma'am.
So that is a normal index, right? Like I didn't got response. Maybe did you got my point? I'm saying like in any book, okay, if we have some chapters or if we have some stories inside the book, in the first page we can see maybe something like index or the book content. On that page it will show the list of all the stories or chapters, and in that along with that chapter names, it will display from maybe from page number 1 to page number 12. Chapter 1 is page number 13 to page number 22, chapter 2 is something like that. We know, right? That is a normal first page whatever we see. Okay, normally we will call it as index. Also in the same way, in SQL also, as we will store a lot of data inside the databases, we will have a concept called as index, okay, which helps SQL to easily identify the data, or which helps a SQL to easily understand or to easily get to know where the exact data is. Okay, basically indexes are created on table. On tables we will create index. By with the help of the index only, SQL will easily understand where the particular data is there. It will easily understand, or it will easily try to fetch the data very fastly. Okay, let's talk about the usage of index, everything. First let's try to understand about types of indexes we have. I mean, how it will work like that. Okay, first let me explain you about types of indexes. Okay, we have two types of indexes. Okay, first one is clustered index, and the second one is non clustered index. Okay, first one is clustered index, second one is non clustered index. So let's see what is clustered index, how SQL will help. I mean, how SQL I mean, once we create an index, how SQL will search the data with the help of that index. Okay, first let's try to talk about cluster index. So generally we know how we will create the tables, right? And after creating the tables, I mean, while creating the tables, we will create a primary keys also. We know primary key concept, have to create a primary key or have to define a primary key whenever we are creating the table, right? So what it happens, cluster index is something which will be defined automatically when there is a primary key on a table. I can say whenever we create a table or whenever we define a primary key on the table, immediately, automatically, without doing anything, cluster index will be created. Okay, let me write it. Clustered index is defined automatically when we define a primary key on in a table or any basically on a column only we will define a primary key, right? So maybe on any column of a table, I can say, right? We will define primary key inside the table on any column, right? Like maybe if we talk about film table, we will have if I talk about actor table, actor id will be my primary key, right? Correct. So I can say I'm defining primary key in the table, as well as I can say I'm defining primary key on a column in the table, right? That is what I wrote here. Basically, whenever we define a primary key, automatically cluster index will be created. We won't create manually. Automatically SQL itself creates a cluster index whenever a primary key is created. Okay, this point is clear.
Yes, ma'am. Clear.
So now let's try to understand what is the use of cluster index, how SQL will use cluster index to search the data. Okay, so suppose if I created a table and I defined any column as a primary key. Okay, then I said that whenever I define a primary key, cluster index will be created automatically, right? So here what cluster index will do, it will sort the data, it will store the data in the sorted manner. Okay, let's see one example, then you can understand very clearly. Maybe I already have some tables, but again, let me create some tables. Maybe in Durgasoft too. Um, Suppose I'm creating a table now. Create table. I'm giving employee. I'm creating normal employee table and maybe I'm giving employee ID. Okay, integer data type, employee name, marker of 10 maybe. Okay, we are enough with the two columns, right? So I'm giving employee ID and employee name here, and I'm creating a table. Employee will be my table name. Okay, employee is my table name and this is my columns. I'm creating this table now. Here I'm not defining primary key. Okay, without a primary key, I'm creating a table. I created it. Let me insert some data. Insert into EMP values. I will insert some. If you observe, I'm inserting the data, but while inserting my data, first I given one value, right? In the employee ID, I given first value as 1, 2, then I given 4, then I given 3. Okay, I didn't used any sequential order here. I didn't use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like a sequential order. Here I used first 4, then I gave first 3. Correct? So I'm inserting this data. Now I'll select this data, select star from EMP. I got my output. Whatever, however I stored in that same sequence, I got my output, right? 1, 2, 4, and 3. Correct? Now let's create one more table and let me define a primary key on that table. I will use the same data. Maybe I will tell employee 1. For employee ID, I'm creating primary key. Okay. That is, I'm just defining primary key for this employee ID column. Okay. Everything is same. Previously I didn't define primary key, now I am defining primary key. I will insert the same data and I will try to display the data. Okay, I'm inserting the data, and as I kept semicolon here, automatically I can execute these two statements. I'm inserting and I'm displaying. What did I do here? Sorry, I didn't change the name. No, sorry. I mean, as I didn't mention primary key here, I forgot to change the name here. So once again, to this table only these values are added and it showed me. Okay, forget about it. I just changed name now. First, now let me execute it once again. Okay, now observe. I inserted the data, I displayed the data. How I can see my data? Here also I inserted 1, 2, 4, and 3. Previously, whenever I didn't declare a primary key, if I store 1, 2, 4, and 3, I didn't used my IDs in a sequential order. It just took however I inserted. First row I inserted 1, second row I inserted 4, 2, third row I inserted 4, next I inserted 3. Without defining a primary key, if I insert like this, it will show as it is however I inserted. That's why previously I got 1, 2, 4, and 3 in my output, right? Now if I execute, after executing employee 1, here I defined the primary key and I inserted same data 1, 2, 4, and 3. But sequel is taking it is displaying the employee ID in a sequential manner, right? 1, 2, 3, and 4. Correct? It didn't displayed
Ma'am,
1, 2.
sometimes we used to write employee ID in primary key auto increment, right?
Yes,
So
it
we
will
should write auto increment, right? Or
unknown. I mean, if needed, auto increment in the sense it will go to the next value if needed, something like that. If I am entering any new row, it will take the new next value. If I didn't mention this first value also, suppose I gave auto increment here, whenever I am displaying the data, if I left this column as empty also, it will take previously, suppose I have 4, next I'm inserting one more data. If I don't give any value here also, it will automatically take 5. The employee id is 5 for that data. Automatically, according to the previous data, it will increment one value. If we don't mention any id whenever we are inserting data also, no problem. It will automatically take. Okay, forget about auto increment now. Let's concentrate on index. I hope you got my
can you
answer.
please scroll up, no, a little bit.
Okay.
I just wanted to see the above example.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll
just
just close
scroll up.
this.
Yeah, one, two,
See,
four, three.
see.
Just select start from EP. Just run this. Yeah, run
But
that.
as I executed two times, we will get two times. Previously, without changing employee one, I executed, right? So ignore last four rows. See first four rows.
Yeah, one,
One,
two,
two,
four,
four,
three.
and three.
Okay. After
Yeah?
including primary key, it is coming one, two, three, four. Okay, I
One, two, three,
understood.
four in a sequential order. If I don't mention a primary key, it will just show me 1, 2, 4, 3. However, I enter that values only, it will see. It will show me. It won't sort the data. Whereas whenever we create primary key, what it happens in the employee in any table, if I define a primary key, automatically cluster index will be created. That cluster index will sort our data. However, we enter our data on only this column. I'm not talking about another remaining columns. On whatever column I defined a primary key. For employee ID, I defined a primary key here. By default, at the back end, for this employee ID column, one clustered index will be created automatically. No, nothing, we don't do anything. we don't create it manually, it will be created automatically by the SQL only. Okay, so that clustered index, what it will do, however we enter data when while using insert command, however we enter the data, it will sort the data and it will display us, let me, it will sort the data and it will display that particular column employee ID row data in a sequential order. It is sorting, that means, it is basically arranging in a order, it is sorting from ascending to descending, we can say. In a sequential order I can see my output, right? But I didn't use that order. Whenever I'm inserting, first I used 1 2, then I used 4, then I used 3. But you can see we got 3 4 3 first and next 4, right? According to that column, the primary key column, it will sort the data. But what is sorting here? Clustered index is sorting here. And we are not creating it. Whenever we define a primary key, automatically cluster index will be created and it will sort the data. And irrespective of how we enter the values, it will give the values in a sequential order. That is the reason whenever you see in Maven movies also, for all the tables, if I execute, wherever we can see primary key, all that columns we will have in a sequential order only, right? Did you got my point about clustered index, everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm using Maven movies here. Maybe I will select star from actor. Whatever tables it is, if we can check in actor ID column, I can see I have primary key. We can see a sequential order only all the IDs. Okay, like that every table, when on whatever column we have primary key, the data will be stored in a sequential or sorted manner only, in a line, in a sequence it will store starting from first number to the last number, like that. Okay, basically what will helps us to store that data in the sense clustered index. We have a concept called as clustered index. Whenever we define a primary key on any column, automatically cluster index will be created at the backend and this will sort the data in a sequential manner. Okay, did you got my point? I will
Basically, ma'am,
discuss.
this is the
Mhm.
Yes,
cluster
ma'am.
index,
Got it.
right?
Yeah,
Using
this is,
primary key.
yeah, using primary key in the sense basically clustered index is created whenever a primary key is created automatically. For not for suppose we will have one rule about primary key is that for every table we will have only one primary key, correct?
Right.
So by default, this that rule will apply for clustered index also, as clustered index will be created automatically on primary key column. We can say, and that is a rule, of course it is created automatically. For every table we will have only one clustered index, correct? Because as we have only one primary key, obviously clustered index will be also only one for every table, right?
No,
I'm
not understood, ma'am.
let me repeat. I'm telling on any table, how many columns are there also, we will create only one primary key for every table, right?
Right.
We have that rule. For every table we will have only one primary key, correct?
Right.
So I am saying that I'm not doing anything to create the cluster ID. Okay, we want to do anything whenever we defined a primary key, or else whenever we created a table and whenever we defined a primary key, automatically cluster index will be created on this employee ID column, on the column where we used primary key. Okay,
Right. Right.
so as we can have only one primary key in every table, obviously we will have only one cluster index for every table, right? Because I got clustered index as I created primary key on this table. So I cannot create primary key on, suppose I created primary key on employee ID, means I cannot create primary key for employee name. If I have salary, if I have date of joining, any other columns, we know I am supposed to create only one primary key. If I already created here, I cannot create primary key for employee name, right? In the same way, whenever I create primary key, cluster index is creating automatically. That means on that primary key column only, for employee ID only, cluster index is will be created automatically. For employee name and for any other columns, if I want to create index, we need to create non-clustered index. But clustered index will be only one for each and every table. On whatever column we created primary key, on that column only automatically clustered index will be created. Am I clear?
Yeah.
For now, just if you understood this example, I will explain you regarding clustered and non-clustered going forward. For now, did you understood what I did here? In the first table, I didn't declared primary key. I tried to enter some values randomly. First I used 4, then I used 3. So if I am entering like this and if I am displaying the data, however I entered that values only database.
So Divya, in this example, so clustered index and non-clustered index, we able to create in the same table.
On the same table, but only one cluster index. I as I created, suppose in employee one table, I created primary key. There is no syntax for creating a primary key in MySQL. Especially whenever we create a primary key, automatically cluster index will be created. There is will be no syntax to create a cluster index. Okay.
Yeah, I got it.
So I created primary key on this employee ID. Automatically clustered index will be created. This one we can see in the ER diagrams. I cannot show you, we cannot see in the database or on the tables whether we have cluster index or not. In the ER diagrams, when we are seeing the ER diagrams, at that time we can see for every primary key column, we will have one cluster index. Okay, I'll show that whenever I'm showing you ER diagrams. Okay, for now just remember, whenever I create a primary key, automatically cluster index will be created for employee ID. Okay, if suppose I want to create an index for any other columns, like maybe employee name, salary, if I have any other columns like that, if I want to create an index, then I will create non-cluster index. We have a syntax for that. I will show you how we will create that and how we will how what non-cluster index will do. We will discuss that in a while. But for now, I'm saying what is the use of cluster index. If first thing, whenever I created a primary key, cluster index will be created automatically. And what cluster index is doing here, yeah, irrespective of how I entered my data. If suppose I entered next also in employee one, suppose I inserted some other data, and suppose I given, I have 1 2 4 3, right? Maybe I'll give 7 first. Next I will give some random name. Okay, next I gave of 8. I'll give it sequentially here. Maybe I will give, then maybe I will give 5 here. Like this, I'm giving very randomly. I'm not, using any sequence here. First I said 1, 2, 4, 3, then I gave 7, 8, 5, right? Let me insert this data also. It got inserted. Now let's see our how it will display our employee one data. I already created primary key. I gave values very randomly. Now I'm displaying the data. It is displaying me in a sequential order. 1 2 3 4 5. It is not displaying 6 for me because I didn't used 6 here, right? Whatever values I entered, that values only it will give me in a sequence. Maybe we can think it as like ascending to descending order. It is sorting and it is giving me, right? Because first I next I used 7 8, after that I used 5, but I can see 5 here only. After 4 only I got my 5, correct? Basically, in primary keys, whenever I declared a primary key, automatically cluster index will be created at the backend. That cluster index, I created primary key on the employee ID column now. So on the employee ID column only cluster index will be created. Whatever values I enter in the employee ID column, cluster index will sort that data. It will display the data in the sequential order. This is what it do.
How
Hmm?
would you know this is a cluster index or not? Because we are just creating normal table and inserting the
I
values.
mean, the concept is like that.
Okay.
We can see the class index is, uh, you know whenever we see the ER diagrams, I will show you the indexes over there, but we have the concept like that. I really cannot show you how we can see cluster index, non-cluster index. Again, when creating non-cluster index also, we won't use like non-cluster over there. We will say normal index only, create index only. I will write. Okay, it is about we are creating indexes, but again we have two divisions in it. We have two types in it. We will call each and every index as index only. I cannot say this is clustered index, but this is non-clustered index. But this is the concept here. We need to understand the concept. That's it. But we have many disadvantages with non-cluster index. What it will do, how it will work, and why cluster index is useful. I will explain. But for now, did you understand what is clustered index and what it is doing?
Yes, ma'am.
So basically, cluster index will be created automatically on the tables whenever we define the primary key. And that cluster index, what it will do, it is basically sorting the data in the sequential order. So whenever we use such primary keys, and what is the use of clustered index in the sense, not only displaying it in the sequential order, it is basically at the back end, it is giving some address for this each and every value. By default, SQL will understand whenever we are defining a primary key, see a clustered index will be created automatically, and it will be sorted the values in a sequential manner. So whenever we are trying to filter our data, suppose if I say where employee ID is equals to 4, SQL will directly, of course, if we use where, it will go row by row only, it will check for every row. But again, if we define primary key like this on these tables, the amount of time it will SQL will take to display the data will be in milliseconds only. Whereas for normal employee table, if I don't use primary key, clustered index won't be created. It is storing here and there, right? Like 1 3 5 1 2 3, sorry, first I got 1 2, next I got 4, next I got 3. So each and every value it will check by default. Where also, as we are using where, here also each and every row it will go, but it won't check that, maybe it won't check that much properly. Basically, the concept here is it will take a very less time to display the, to whenever we apply any filters, if there is a primary key, due to the concept of the clustered index, it will display the output very fastly when comparing to the normal tables. So here the query execution will become faster here whenever we use primary keys in a table because of the clustered index. Clear?
Yes.
Okay.
And Divya, I have another question. So,
Yes, please.
whenever we created the table without primary key, so
Mhm.
you said default primary key is generated, right? So, how do we find the default primary key in the schema? Like
Default
table is,
primary key. I didn't got your question.
yeah, you said no already. Without primary key, whenever we created table, so
Okay.
automatically one column treated as primary key.
I didn't
Is
said
my
like
question
that.
wrong?
Yeah, I didn't said like that. See,
So,
I
default
try to
primary.
ask me 1 second. It's not default primary key. We will
Okay.
have one default not null key.
o-
We will
Okay.
have one key like that. It's only, it won't allows not null, no, it won't allows null values, but it will allows duplicate values. We have one key called as, by default it will create not null key. I will show you whenever I'm discussing about the ER diagrams. Okay, how to
Yeah.
understand what is not null columns over there, how we can identify all these keys, like whenever we are seeing ER diagrams, what is primary key, what is foreign key, what is not null key. By default, all the, in all the tables, if we didn't define any primary key, for the maybe numerical columns, at least for one column, it will by default SQL will take not null. Okay, I'll show you whenever I'm discussing about ER diagrams, but it is not default primary key, it is default not null key only. We can are not supposed to enter null values here, but duplicates it will take.
Yeah, got it.
Okay. Yeah.
Ma'am, if
Thank
somebody will ask what is cluster index, then you can
Hmm.
say like using primary key indexes are automatically defined in a sequential order like 1, 2, 3, 4, like.
Right, that's it. You need to say, first of all, whenever we create a primary key, automatically cluster index will be created. And what is the use of cluster index? In the sense, it will sort the data in that column. It will just display the data, or it will store the data in the sequential order, so that it helps the database, or it helps the SQL to to execute the query faster. Let's see, for now just leave this like here only. You understood what is primary key? I mean, whenever we created primary key, clustered index is creating automatically, and it is sorting the data, right? For now just leave this. Let's try to understand non-clustered index, then you can relate it a little bit, what basically index is doing. Okay. Okay, is that fine? Let me explain about non-clustered index, then you can easily understand what is the role of index here basically. So at that time you can understand the importance of, or else what is the use of clustered index. Let's talk afterwards. Now let me explain about non-clustered index. Actually, I'm removing this everything, okay, from here. Whenever we use indexes, I mean, our main importance is that our main why we are using indexes, in the sense it will help in to retrieve the data faster. Whenever we are SQL is executing any query, it that query performance will be faster whenever we use this indexes, especially clustered indexes. So what is non-clustered index, how we will create that, let's see now. We have another index called as non-clustered index. As I said, for every table, we know we have only one primary key, right? We have only one primary key for every table, correct? So by default, I can say we will have only one clustered index for every table, right? Because if I define primary key only, for that column only cluster index is defining automatically, correct? So if I am saying I will have only one primary key for every table, for obviously we will have only one clustered index for every table, because on the primary key table, primary key column only cluster index will be created, right? So this is a rule, or else we can, and this is our rule, and by with the help of this rule we can come to this conclusion, I can say. Okay. Now as I am saying, for every table we are having only one clustered index, but suppose in any table, if we want to create the index for any other columns, we will use non-clustered index. Okay. For example, previously we used employees table. I created employees 1. In this employee 1 table only I created primary key. It's not this one. This one only, right? 1 2 3 4 5 7 8. Yeah, this one, employee 1 table only. I created a primary key and I inserted some data here. So as I created primary key on employee ID column, automatically I got clustered index on my employee ID column. Suppose if I want to create an index for employee name column, at that time we will create a non-clustered index. Okay. So let's see what non-cluster index will do. So I can say, if I want to create index for any other columns, for any other columns than primary key, I can say. On primary key column only we will have clustered index. Without primary, not by leaving the primary key columns, if we want to create any on any other columns, if we want to create the index, that then we will create non-clustered index, correct? Or else I will say any other remaining columns. We create non-cluster index. Okay. So now when I create a non-cluster index, what it will do in the sense, suppose as I have employee ID column and employee name column, now I'm going to create a non-cluster index for employee name column. Now let's try to understand about the concept here, then I will show how we will create the indexes. For example, I have some ID column, I have some name column. Okay, in that ID column I'm having some values. I'm especially talking about the name columns only. Suppose I given B here. Okay. Imagine I have some data like this. As I already created cluster index on the ID, my ID data will be in the sequential order only 1 to 5. Okay. Suppose imagine now I have names like this. Okay, as we this is the character data, I'm just taking B D A E something like this. Okay, if I am talking that if this is a alphabetical order, my sequence will be A B C D E, this will be my sequence, right? Just try to understand the concept what non-clustered index is doing here. So this will be my sequence here, but I have some data randomly, it is not in the sequential order. Okay, now if I want to create a non-clustered index here, what it will do in the sense, by default at the backend it will create another separate table. Suppose if I say, suppose I have data like this is my table, ID column, name column. Now if I write a query to display the details of where name is equals to A. Okay, if I'm saying where name is equals to A, in the sense we know what where clause will do, it will go to the each row, it will check for the data and it will display where my A is, that data it will display, right? So basically whenever we are creating the non-clustered index, for cluster index what it is doing, it will automatically sort the data and it will displaying the data in the sequential order. But here non-cluster index, for the another for the other columns, when we are creating the indexes, that is non-cluster indexes, what it is doing in the sense, SQL will create a separate table at the back end. It will create a separate table, and what it will do in that table, it will save all my names here. Suppose I'm creating a non-cluster index on the name column, it will create at the back end, it will create a separate table. In that table it will store my names here, my names in the sequential order. Okay, in that table it will store the names in the sequential, in the sorted manner or in the sequential order, and it will save the address of that value also. Let me show you, 1 second. Here I'm saying I created one non-clustered index on my name. Name is one column I created here. Okay, what SQL will do at the backend, it will create one table. It will store two columns in it. Okay, the first column will be my name column. Okay, here it is name, and my second column will be my address column. Okay, this is address. What SQL will do, as I have this random data like this, it will try to sort the data. It will save the data in this sequential manner, A, B, C, D, E, like this first. And for each and every value for A, it will give one address of the value. Here, address in the sense I'm talking about the memory address. Okay. Suppose I don't know how memory address will look like. Suppose if I'm saying 1010 something like that. For B, it will use some of the address. Okay. Just imagine this one. I also don't know how memory address will look like. But basically, this is the concept. What SQL will do, it will save the memory address of A here in this table. In the second row, it will save the memory address of B. Likewise, it will store for each and every value, it will store the memory address of that value. This memory address, this 1010 something I wrote, this memory address from where it is taking, in the sense, here I have A, right? That memory address it is storing. Okay, here I have B, right? That memory address it is storing. See, I'm having here this memory address it is storing. If I'm here talking about only alphabets, in names we will have some words over there. For every word, basically it will create a separate table at the back end. It will store the data, and it will store the corresponding memory address in this table. Okay, so whenever we execute, whenever I say select star from table where name is equals to A, SQL will first goes to this table. It will check where my A is. It will check what is the corresponding memory address. It will come back to this column. It will check where it will know what is the memory address for each and every row. Instead of checking each and every row, it will directly go to that memory address, and it will, you know display that it will display that particular row, or it will filter that particular row for us. This is what it's happening in the backend. Am I clear?
Ma'am, if we like, for example, I'm storing B, so the memory address is 1010. Then storing D, then 1011. So like this, it stores or it stores alphabetically.
Which this memory address is?
For example, name. Here you have written B D A C E, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the
If
address will
I'm
be like,
it will do
yes.
like, if I have names, it will sort all my A alphabetical names first, then all my A B alphabetical names for second, C alphabetical names third, and for each and every name it will store in memory address. For that particular memory address only it will go. Basically in real time we will have some thousands of rows, right? It won't check each and every row. Instead of that, it will go to this table. It will check the memory address. Suppose I'm saying where name is equals to Sam. Sam in the sense first letter is S. It will directly go to, in this table where the S alphabets are there, it will go to the S alphabets. It will check for that word, the corresponding memory address it will check. It will come back to this table. It will go directly to that memory address row, and it will display the data. This is the process what SQL will follow here whenever we are using row. Whenever we are using where clause.
So basically,
But
it
the
stores in
problem here
alphabetical.
is, sorry,
Basically, it stores in alphabetical way, right?
yes, it will stores in the alphabetical way, only the first letters I can say.
Okay.
Like all
So
names
there are
starting with,
two A.
sorry,
For example, there are two A. I mean, A in the first letter. Like,
that's what. See, again, it depends. Suppose if I have if you're saying A B, some name, Arti, something like that. Next, I am having A with the D, something like that. It will maybe check, this will be one thing. Maybe because of B, as I have B, it will be give one address. As I have D, it will give the next address. I also don't know how it will do. But basically the concept is, according to the alphabets, it will store the data in the separate table, and it will give some memory, and it will go back to that memory, and it will display the data. Again, we have many disadvantages with this concept also. Because if suppose I'm saying, whenever on my name column, it is creating a non, if again every time it won't follow this process. it will, whenever I create a non-cluster index on this column only, it will follow this process. If I didn't create it, if I don't create any index on my name column, previously what concept we understood, like we said, where clause will check for each and every row, and where whenever it is satisfying it will displace, correct? That one only it will follow if we don't create any indexes. If we create index on name, then it will follow this method. Basically, it is just storing some reference, address here in this table. By taking this address value as a reference, it will go to that row and it will display the data. And what is the disadvantage on this concept? In the sense, I am saying, for each and every table it is storing a separate table, correct? Likewise, if we imagine, if we can create only one clustered index for every table, but we can create multiple non-clustered indexes. So if I keep on creating how many non-clustered indexes, that many tables are created at the backend, correct? Again, it is waste of memory only, correct? For this table already I have the data here. Just to make it to understand, to address, to store the address of the value, non-clustered index is creating another table and it is storing the data. And again, if it store also, like clustered index, it is not storing in the sorted manner, in the output only it is showing us. It is not using, clustered index is not using any separate tables, and it is not wasting the memory. It is directly showing the output. In the output only it is storing, it is showing the sorted way, it is displaying in a sequential manner. Whereas in non-clustered index, for every column, wherever we create index, one separate table is creating, which leads to the memory wastage thing, correct? So I won't say we won't create indexes, but we will create indexes if needed only for some columns. By default, for every primary key, clustered index will be created. Okay. For non-clustered index, if needed only, we will create, or else we will avoid creating non-clustered indexes because of this issue. The memory wastage kind of thing, right? For every table on every column, again I'm talking about columns here. Suppose I have some another column here, maybe date of joining, maybe any other column. For that column also, if we are creating non-clustered index, for dates I also don't know how it will store. For characters, it will store in this sequential order. Maybe for dates, maybe it will store in the dates, previous dates first, latest dates next. Maybe I also don't know what order it will take to store. But again, for the dates column also, it will create a separate table and it will store the values, it will store the addresses correspondingly. Like that, we will have multiple columns in every table. If we keep on creating indexes on every table, for each and every column we are index is creating a separate table, right? That is really useless. It's waste of memory, it's waste of time. We won't create it, but it's waste of memory. So of course we can create multiple indexes, but we won't prefer creating multiple non-clustered indexes. We will always try to use the clustered index only, because this will all in MySQL, clustered index will be created automatically. In some other, maybe some other syntaxes, some other tools, not on MySQL, SQL Server, MongoDB, like that, some other tools, we some tools we manually create clustered index. So there what we will do, we will use clustered indexes. We won't prefer to create non-clustered index. Here we are not creating manually, automatically MySQL is creating a clustered index. By using cluster index, all see where when it will be useful, this concept also, whenever we are filtering the data. Suppose if I already created the primary key, I all automatically my clustered index will be created. Based on that value also I can filter, no need of using this column only, right? That is the reason in where clause we will prefer using primary key columns whenever we are using filters. First thing is we will have unique values. Second thing is by default we will have clustered index. It will sorted in the sequential order. So to search the row, to search that particular value, SQL feels easy whenever we use this column. Suppose I say where my id is equals to 2 will be better than saying where name is equals to d, because it will store in sequential order, right? Like that it is. Did you got my point? This is a
If you are giving an example, that would be really great.
what kind of example? I will show how we will create the index,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
this is the concept because we cannot see. This is the overall concept only. What I am saying, names and memories. We cannot see really how it will store, where it will store. I also don't know how memory address will look like. Also, I don't know. I'm just giving you the random, maybe random example or random imagination of the process which is going on at the back end.
Ma'am, one
Okay.
question.
Yes, please.
Ma'am, in clustered, like one primary key, one cluster index.
Correct.
So, ma'am, in this non-clustered, multiple column is possible or not possible for creating?
Is possible. That is what I'm saying. I
Okay.
can multiple columns will there. Suppose here in the employee table I have ID, I have name, maybe I have salary. Salary again, let me just remove this. Suppose I have salary. In salary also I have numerical data only, but it won't, as we are not creating primary key. If we create a non-clustered index on the salary, in this whenever it is creating table, it will again sort the data in 1 2 3 4 5 manner only, correct, according to the salary. If I have 1000, 1200, 1300, it will sort in ascending to the descending. For each and every value it will give some memory address, like that. For salary column, for date of joining column, how many columns are there. If needed, whenever we create index, we can create multiple indexes, but again, for every index one table will be created at the back end. So how many indexes we created, suppose in one table I have 6 columns. If I am choosing to pre- sorry guys, in one table if I am having some 5 or 6 columns, every time if I prefer to create 3 non-clustered indexes, for the table itself at the back end 3 separate tables are created, correct.
Yes.
Suppose I'm saying I have 6 columns in one table. By default I have one primary key, so one clustered index is created. I will be left over with 5 columns. Out of that 5 columns, if I thought to create 3 non-clustered indexes for this one table, again separately I'm creating 3 tables. SQL is creating 3 tables at the backend, correct. Obviously the memory will be wasted when we follow this concept. Now I will show you how we will create this, what we call, how we will create the index. Okay. And as I said, this is the process of non-clustered index, but we won't prefer creating non-clustered index because of this memory wastage issue. Okay. If needed only we will create, but in especially in MySQL, as uh, automatically whenever we create the primary key, cluster index is already creating. So one, at least one column is enough for searching. No need of creating non-cluster indexes. By using this cluster index only, we can increase our query, optimization. I can say we can increase the speed of query, retrieval query faster. Whenever we execute any query, SQL will definitely executes that query faster because of this cluster index. Basically, the use of index is only to increase the fast retrieval process whenever we execute any query. To basically what is index, I am saying in books also. Why index we will use? Suppose if I am saying my chapter 1 belongs to 1 to 10, in the sense, instead of checking my complete book, we will directly go to that 1 to 10 pages and we will understand the chapter 1 over there. Basically we are giving some reference of our data, where that data is present, right? That is the concept of index here. I said I have clustered index, non-clustered index. Non-clustered index is every time it is creating some separate tables. So if we create multiple non-clustered index, again our memory will be wasted. But by default, for every primary key, as clustered index is creating automatically, as the reason for creating cluster index is that to make our SQL query, executed faster. So it can be done with any one index also. No need of non-clustered indexes only. By default, by using cluster index, we prefer to use that is the reason we prefer to use primary key columns whenever we are applying some filters. Accordingly, this cluster index will help to uh, solve our the reason why we are creating indexes is that to retrieve the data faster. So with the help of clustered index only, our our requirement is done. No need of using non-clustered indexes only at all in MySQL especially. Am I clear?
Yes,
But
ma'am.
we should know the concept. That is the reason I said what non-cluster index is doing. Whenever we are created, it is separate, it is creating a separate table. It will store the values of the data, and for that particular values it will store the corresponding address. So it is again the waste of memory, a waste. It's a waste thing. We have a drawback. That is only the drawback with the non-clustered indexes. That is the reason we won't prefer using non-clustered index. The reason why we are creating index is to make the SQL query execution faster, which will be satisfied, or which will be done by using clustered indexes. Okay, for as a so as that is the reason we prefer in every table we will prefer to create a primary key. And whenever we are dealing with the data, whenever we are writing any query, any SQL query, if we are applying any filters, we will prefer to, especially where clause, we will prefer to use the primary key. Okay, primary key column. That's the reason we will say always where id is equals to 2, where id is equals to 5, like that. Everyone, I hope it is clear. Let me show you. Yes, any doubts?
No, ma'am. Clear, clear.
Okay, so let me show you how we will create index quickly. It is very simple. Guys, please mute yourself. So now let me show you how to create a index. Okay, again here I'm saying for primary, I mean in MySQL especially, for clustered indexes will be automatically created whenever we are creating a primary key. Okay, so if we want to create a index, in the sense we are talking about non-clustered index only. But again, we don't mention anything here, like maybe clustered, non-clustered, we won't mention. We will use a normal query here, because this automatically creation of clustered index is, especially it is available in only MySQL. If you are talking about any other tools, it we won't I mean clustered index won't be automatically created on the, whenever we define a primary key. We need to create a clustered index manually for every primary key column. The concept is same. Again, for primary key column only we will create, but it we should create manually. SQL won't create automatically in remaining tools, maybe like SQL Server, like any another tools. But MySQL only, it will be created automatically, clustered index. Okay, maybe because of that reason we will use only index part here. We won't use whether we are creating clustered index or non-clustered index. Let me show you the syntax. I will write it as create index name. Okay, I will say create index name on table name, and I need to mention the column name as well, that too within the brackets, like this. If suppose in SQL Server we also need to create the clustered index, so maybe that is the reason we will say create index only. I'm not saying create non-cluster index or create clustered index. This thing, especially the clustered index advantage, we have only on MySQL. It will be automatically created. In SQL Server we need to create clustered index and non-clustered index manually only. So we don't mention anything in the queries. Accordingly, whatever column we will create, suppose in SQL Server if I am creating the index on the primary key column, it will considered as a, it will automatically taken as a clustered index. For remaining columns, if I am creating, it will be treated as a non-clustered index. I hope I'm clear. So let me show you how we will create any index. Maybe, sorry. On which column? Maybe on the same column I will create. I will create on for the employee one table.
Madam,
Oh, yes, please.
then since index is a virtual column, so delete, truncate, and drop is possible or not possible? Because table is not there in this.
No, we won't do any such things here. We will only create the index. We will drop the index. That's it.
Okay, only
Either we
drop.
will use index or we will remove the index. Nothing can be done in the index. Okay.
Okay.
So maybe for employee one only I'm creating here. This is the table I'm creating for e name. So I can say ix underscore e name. Any name we can give. On table name is my employee one. Of column name is e name. Okay, like that, whatever column we need to create, whatever table we need to create, we will give the table name of column name. We need to give randomly any index name here. Okay, this will be the syntax. It will be created. We cannot see here the indexes. We can see in the ER diagrams. I will show you whenever I'm explaining about the ER diagrams. So this is the one way to create the index. We have another way also to creating the index only. We will just create the index and we will remove the index. Nothing can be done more than that. Either we can create the index by using create command, or else even we can create the index by using alter command also. I will say directly alter table name, add index name. This will be my syntax over there. Okay, index name of column name. I need to mention the column name also, right? On which column I'm going to create index. So I will say alter table. I already created for this table, no? Maybe I will create for course details table, or else we cannot create multiple indexes. If I try to create one more index on this table on this column, I mean on this table on this column, it will throw me error. It will say already existed. So we have employees table here. I'm already having primary key here. I'm saying I want to add index name for e name. E name is my column. Maybe I'll give anything like this. Okay, this will be my index name. This will be my column name. Okay, in this is my alter table name, add index name of column name. Okay, I'm executing. It got executed. This is how we will create indexes. If I want to drop index, I will simply say drop index name. That's it. Okay, I will simply say drop index name. Actually, I need to use alter command. Sorry, I need to say alter table name. On which table we are dropping also we need to mention, right? So I'm saying I will say alter table name. Inside alter we will use drop index name. Like however we are dropping the columns, if from the existing tables, if we want to remove the columns, we will use alter table name, drop column name, right? In the same way we need to use like this only. We are done with the time, no? Okay, it got altered in the sense the index will be dropped. Okay guys, I hope this is clear. If you have any doubts, let's discuss in the tomorrow's class. I'm not saying we are done with the time, right? Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I hope this everything is clear for you.
Yes, yes.
If any doubts are there, let's discuss in the tomorrow's class. Okay.
Okay.
Okay guys, all right, bye bye.